Working as the Post-and-Courier's Clemson reporter, I get to cover some of the top teams in the nation. One of the things that makes my job really interesting is being able to be at the facility, talking to the players, getting to learn their stories. With a subscription to the Tiger Take, you'll not only get to read everything I write on postandcourier.com, but you'll also get the latest updates straight to your inbox. But more than that, you'll get insights that you won't find anywhere else. Hey guys, this is Jon Blau, your Clemson reporter with the Post-and-Courier. We're here for our Countdown to Kickoff feature, previewing Clemson's game against Georgia Tech. I have Ken Sugiura here from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. First, before we get started with our conversation, I want to tell you guys about the Tiger Take, our newsletter sent out basically on near daily basis. All the things I can't get in our stories in the newspaper, email out on, to your inbox that, has extra tidbits and analysis and all of that. So if you want to subscribe, go to postandcourier.com/the Tiger Take. And now let's get to Ken. Ken, welcome. I think you're at the Georgia Tech facilities right now. I guess, how's the week going?
Well, they had their first practice. I guess, they're kind of their version of their Monday practice or Tuesday practice today. Obviously counting it down. But yeah, they're obviously looking forward, excited about this game, playing in Mercedes-Benz, playing a rival, obviously a big hill to climb, but yeah, they're fairly healthy, looks like, and I'm sure going to be ready to go on Monday.
Yeah. How weird is it thinking back to last year's game? I mean, I came here from Indiana. This was my first year covering Clemson. I heard that the ACC schedule is always a breeze for the Tigers. And then they come in and it's a down to the wire game. I mean, literally a goal line stop by James Skalski at the end kind of sealed it. What did that game mean for the Yellowjackets last year? Obviously they went on to a 3-9 season, but does that give them more confidence going into this year? I mean, considering how close last year's game was.
It does. Yeah. And I guess to go back to last year, I remember writing stories about, the year before. It was, you're testing my memory, it was like 73-6 or something like that. And so everyone's thinking it's going to be kind of the same. And because they just lost 2 weeks earlier to Northern Illinois. So everyone was thinking, this is the beginning of a long, miserable season, which in some ways it turned out to be. But the game, actually, the Clemson game was something of a high point. You nearly upset, those 6-time defending conference champions in their own on their own field, and in some ways you really should have, and you really did it with your number 2 quarterback. It was a game that talking to players recently, I think that was something they took a lot of confidence from. They went the next week and actually had their highest point of the season. They beat North Carolina in Mercedes-Benz. So yeah, and I think now looking back at it, they feel like we were close, we were at their place and we almost had them, as we can't do it, in a quote unquote neutral site. So yeah, I think that is a game that they take some confidence from for sure.
Yeah. I mean, how different of a Georgia Tech team is this year? I mean, I think everybody knows Jahmyr Gibbs is now in Alabama.
Right.
Jordan Yates, that quarterback that Clemson was dealing with, is now at Sam Houston State.
Right.
Kind of what is the makeup of this team? I mean, what are some of the strengths, some of the weaknesses, some of the things that you're kind of looking for as they start the season against the Tigers?
Sure. Well, it's a very different team. They have 7 new assistant coaches. They fired 3 and 4 others left for their jobs. Most notably, Tashard Choice, who was the running back coach and the guy who recruited Jahmyr Gibbs to Tech. They lost a ton of starters on both sides of the ball. Starting with Jahmyr Gibbs. And so on offense, they have a different scheme. Chip Long, who is, I guess, most famously, in Notre Dame for 3 years with Brian Kelly, he's here and changed up the scheme. It's maybe a little faster pace, more reliant on tight ends. I think they're going to try to be, a downhill running team. Defensively, they've kind of changed up certainly just the structure of how they're going to try to coach things. And Jeff Collins, the head coach, is committed to being more committed to, I guess, to coaching that side of the ball. And, but yeah, it's a lot of new faces, or certainly faces that maybe that not everyone's familiar with. And, there's a lot of transfers in and out, I guess, for that matter. But yeah, so I say that answers your question. I think you'll probably see, considerably a different team than Clemson fans saw last year.
Yeah, I think the one coach, you're talking about all the different coaches. Chris Winkie obviously is a name that
Right.
everybody knows, and Jeff Sims, the quarterback. I was actually reading your story about the relationship between Sims and Winkie, and the most interesting thing that stood out to me was the underpants. Can you explain to everybody what Ethica underpants are and the
Sure.
NIL deal that came out of that?
Yeah, well, I'm grateful for Jeff for making me aware of this. So I was asking him at their media day, Georgia Tech's media day, kind of what was your favorite NIL deal? And he's had, some really good ones. He had one with Mercedes-Benz. I don't think he got a card of it, but still kind of cool. And then, some other endorsement things. They said, oh, it's the one with Ethica, which I never heard of, but which is a clothing brand. And he was saying, yeah, you get free underwear. And he said, yeah, you post and they send you some more. And he's like, yeah, you don't have to go out and shop for underwear anymore. So I guess to maybe at his heart, he's still a college student and getting free underwear is still kind of a cool deal. I suppose it is for any age, but maybe for a college kid who's not so keen on maybe doing laundry all the time. But yeah, so that was his favorite NIL deal, he was saying. And but yeah, the story was, I think what Georgia Tech did, they were fortunate to, because Chip Long, his background is coaching tight ends, and he was originally going to be coaching the quarterbacks, but then the tight ends coach left. He went to Temple, where he'd come from, and so that enabled them for Chip Long to move to tight ends, and then them to hire a quarterbacks coach who turned out to be Chris Winkie. And so I think one thing that they're kind of touting is that Jeff Sims now has a specific position quarterbacks coach, whereas typically it's, the coordinator is also the quarterbacks coach. So he has someone who can really work on him specifically and get him better. And so they're counting on that relationship, that partnership, helping Jeff to become, the kind of quarterback they need him to be.
Yeah, and in terms of Chip Long, you brought him up a couple of times. I mean, you have any insight into what his scheme might be like, either back from Notre Dame, what he was like then, or has he described in terms of tempo, taking shots down the field, running the ball?
Sure.
Any type of essence there that you expect to see?
Yeah, two things stand out. One is certainly more obvious, is that they're going to, I think, pace just in terms of going play to play, so that you kind of like a 2-minute pace, which is they've done some of that with Dave Patton, his predecessor, but not always. And honestly, sometimes it kind of backfires. It was before you got there, but that 2020 game, the one that got out of control, they did try to keep going faster. And when they you go 3 and out or 4 and out, you're giving Clemson and Trevor Lawrence the ball back, which obviously was not a keen wise strategy. And so that enabled Clemson to rack up the points. But that is what they're going to, I think that's one kind of a central tenet of what Chip Long does. And is that, as I think I mentioned before, they do a lot of 12 personnel, a lot of, 1 back, 2 tight end stuff. I think, just in terms of, I think he likes that versatility that the tight ends have as both blockers and potential receivers. And they've got a few guys on the roster, I think, that can fill that role well. But then two, one strength of this team, maybe the strength of this team, is they've got they're deep at running back. Dante Smith, Dylan McDuffie, Hassan Haller, 3 guys that all have experience. 2 came in as transfers that should be able to move the ball for them. So I would think you're going to, and then another thing he said actually to that end is he said they want to be close to 60-40 run pass. So I think you'll see a lot of those guys, and probably, Jeff Sims also doing some design runs or scrambling. So that's some of the things I think that Clemson should be expecting to see on Monday.
What is the state of the offensive line? I think I heard there's a lot of different starters there. Paul Teho actually is a guy from Clemson who's now at Georgia Tech. Kind of, how would you describe kind of the faith in the offensive line heading into this game, or are there some things they're trying to figure out?
Well, that's to me is maybe the key of this game. So last year's line, they lost 3 starters off of it, or certainly the best player, one of the offensive tackles, and then 2 other guys who played a ton of snaps for them. And so they're going in this year with really 1.5 returning starters, I guess you'd say. And they're, mixing in, trying to get some transfers like Paul Teho. Pierce Quick from Alabama is another one. And then they're going to have to play some freshmen or redshirt freshmen who haven't played yet. And probably the one area I'm really kind of curious to see is what will probably be a left tackle, either Corey Robinson, who's transferred from Kansas, or Jakaya Leftwich, who's a redshirt freshman, neither of whom played a snap last year, will be lining up against Miles Murphy potentially, who's all ACC potential, probably first round pick. And so that's it's it's an area that is a question mark. Brent Key, the offensive line coach, said something along the line. He said he's 100% confident that of what those guys can do. And so we'll see. It certainly to me is a question mark. We'll see. Brent Key feels who has a better eye on this than I do, is comfortable what he has. They feel like they're deeper there, but certainly experience is a question mark.
Yeah, I mean, again, you brought it up as a key to the game. Do you think this is the key to the game? I mean, just the strength of Clemson's defensive line against that offensive line with so much inexperience and moving pieces, or is there something else that you point to and say that's also going to determine kind of how this game's going to go?
Well, really, yeah, to me, I would say that is, or if it's not the key, it's certainly way, way up there. The other one, I mean, in terms of just looking at Tech's roster and where they're going to be attacked or where they have some areas you have less certainty about. The defensive line is another where they lost a lot of guys, and they're young and inexperienced there. And I think it remains to be seen with Clemson's offensive line. I know that was an area where they probably weren't as strong as they wanted to be last season, but I think they have more experience there back there. I mean, it's kind of trite or cliche to say that the games are off on the side of the lines, but I think in this case certainly that's an area where Tech's going to be a lot better than I think maybe you would see them on paper being in order to have a chance in the game.
Yeah, and so just a couple of things that stood out to me. EJ Jenkins, a 6'7", 243-pound wide receiver, so he's not a tight end. What kind of matchup problem could he be for Clemson's defense?
Yeah, so actually it's funny. He's another guy that maybe Clemson fans might remember. He was at South Carolina last year. He played a little bit and transferred to Georgia Tech. But yeah, as you say, he's, his size, I think there's two other receivers in the ACC that are as tall as he is, and none as big. Like those two guys aren't nearly as big. So he really does look more like a tight end, but they have him lined out to the boundary side. And, they're going to hope that he's the kind of the matchup problem that you would think someone that size would be, someone who can wall off, a cornerback, one of the backup quarterback, Zach Gibson was saying the other day that, he goes against a 6'2" cornerback, and, EJ has 5 inches on him, and he's long, he's got, the wide catch radius. And so against most guys, at least physically, he's going to have, a size advantage on them. So you can see him potentially being kind of like a red zone threat, someone you can throw a lot of fades to and that sort of thing, throw 50-50 balls at. So yeah, I think he caught like 8 passes last year in South Carolina. So he's a little bit, has to prove himself at this level. He did really well when he was at St. Francis at the FCS level. But yeah, this is obviously their first chance to, our fans' first chance to see what he can do. And I'll be certainly very curious about, how he and Jeff Sims connect.
Yeah. And a very Clemson related question. I know I brought up Paul Tejo earlier. Tyson Pumachan, another guy who went to Georgia Tech. Was he in the race to be quarterback? What is his role? I mean, is there any thought that he could see the field, I guess, against Clemson, or is he kind of just more the man behind the scenes telling everybody Clemson's secrets, or how's that going to work?
Right. So, yeah, I think when certainly when Jeff Sims returned as a 2-year starter, so I think he was pretty firmly entrenched. And I think just he had a good spring also with Chip Long. And so that kind of further established his spot as a starter. As far as how he'll be used, I think he's certainly someone that they hope can push Jeff Sims a little bit. But it may be the sort of thing where, because of his running ability and his ability to do things with his feet, there may be a package for him here or there. But I think my guess would be that'd be the extent that he would be playing on Monday if he does.
Yeah, and have you talked to, I think I saw a quote from Paul Tejo. I mean, is there any excitement for those guys, at least for Paul, in terms of playing Clemson, I guess rematching against kind of some of his former teammates?
I confess I don't know that I asked him that specifically. We talked to him in media today, and I was mostly kind of curious about his perspective on Tech. But I'm certainly sure that, I remember actually, oddly enough, I spoke more with Jordan McFadden, who was a close friend of Paul's at the ACC kickoff about that. And he was saying how excited he was for Paul to be in a place where hopefully he has a chance to play. And he was saying, I hope he can be the best guard in the ACC or whatever in the country, except for on one day out of the year. So I definitely think there's a lot of good feeling, I'm sure, not just with Paul, but with Tyson also. And I'm sure they'll be, excited or happy to see old teammates. There's something I asked the defensive coordinator, Andrew Thacker, about what kind of value they might have as providers of intelligence into the Clemson, offensive system. And obviously there's a new coordinator, but he was saying, like, he was asking about kind of how they do stuff operationally, what do they do pre-snap, more than kind of what are their favorite plays and that kind of thing. But yeah, hopefully they'll both get a chance to get in and do something. I'd certainly lean more toward the happening with Paul Tio than Tyson. But yeah, kind of one of those new things that happens now with the transfer rules being relaxed, both, just in terms of being able to play immediately and just being able to go within the conference.
Yeah, and then in terms of Mercedes-Benz Stadium, I guess for Clemson fans that haven't been there, myself, I guess, is there anything interesting that we should be looking for, or what is the experience like? I guess being an Atlanta guy.
Well, unfortunately, talking to someone who's been there, I think twice, and was in the press box both times. The one thing I would say is it's well, a couple of things. It's a beautiful building, and it should be for the amount of money that was spent on it. But it's got a great view of downtown Atlanta. One of the sides is glassed in. Another thing that's kind of cool is that the concessions are very well priced in terms of being inexpensive. So that's something that maybe Clemson fans would be excited about. Obviously, the unusual thing here is that I think there was an expectation, and certainly actually Tech people were planning on having the full stadium configuration for this game, thinking it would sell out. But I think probably because of lower demand on Tech side, they decided to reduce it to the 42-5 configuration that they had for last year's game, just closing off the upper deck. So that'll be a little different feel, I guess. But yeah, so I guess Clemson fans who can get in, they should be fortunate that they are, because it's become a tougher ticket than you might have thought a few months ago.
I guess to basically wrap this up, I mean, what do you think would be a positive outcome for both teams in this game? I mean, for Georgia Tech, and then I guess I'll cover Clemson after your bit.
Sure. Well, given that, a lot's on the line for Georgia Tech and Jeff Collins specifically this season, I don't know that there's any grand expectation that Tech's going to win this game. I mean, certainly there are some people I've talked to that, like, they wouldn't be surprised if it happened. Certainly you look at Georgia Tech having something of an advantage in that they have a new offensive coordinator, and that maybe they have some wrinkles that Clemson hasn't seen. That happened last year, actually, too, in terms of it. They rolled out a defense that they hadn't yet unveiled for the Clemson game. So I would think what Tech fans are hoping for is, be competitive, don't let it be a runaway. Both sides looking coordinated and sharp, and at least give some hope for the rest of the season. Obviously a win would be great, but I think as long as you're looking like, okay, this team is clearly better than the team we saw a year ago that lost its last two games by, combined 100-0 score, then I think that'll be a good result, results aside, or, win-loss aside for Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I think for Clemson, obviously, last year was such a tight game. I think they want it to be a little more lopsided this year, especially for BJ Uyunglele and the offense to kind of get going and kind of those questions in terms of quarterback battle and all of that. So, yeah, obviously, Ken, thanks for coming in here and talking to us. I guess you want to share your Twitter account, Atlanta Journal-Constitution URL, if people want to read up on Georgia Tech.
So my Twitter, and it'll to spell it out for you, my name's a little tricky. It's KSUGIURAAJC, and then the paper's website, the AJC website is ajc.com, and it's fairly easy to find the Georgia Tech stuff there. I'm sure I'll be writing a little bit about Clemson also. So yeah, Clemson fans are invited and welcome.
Yeah, and again, for you guys, the Tiger Take is our newsletter subscription that you can get. I send emails to your inbox basically every day, news and analysis. If you want to get that, postandcourier.com/the Tiger Take. So again, thanks Ken for stopping by. Thanks guys for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Very good. Thanks, Sean.